Casino Rama's slogan, the great indoors, and there's a reason for that, because we created some of the greatest indoor waterfalls you've ever seen. Nearly 40 years ago, my parents started this business committed to building the best possible feature with the longest lasting materials possible.
My brother and I have loved building. We've been building together since I was a child. You're gonna see how creative we get to be building beautiful works of art that mimic nature.
One of my favorite parts of this entire build is the story behind it. So this casino is on an indigenous region, and the whole point of this is that they can incorporate their culture, their rich story, their background. And so every single design choice at every part of this build tried to encompass exactly what the community wanted and needed to feel culturally rich. We were lucky enough to be part of that, and I'm just so glad because what a part of our history as a company and one of the greatest builds we ever got to be part of.
What is there to say about Casino Rama? Well, for me, this is one of the most impactful projects of my entire career. Not just professionally, but personally. I actually moved up there for 2 years of my life, and I lived with the crew, really lived with the crew for the very first time. We had a little cottage right there on the lake. There was 5 bedrooms, and it was kind of isolating, but at the same time, we became a pretty tight unit. I find it interesting that a job like that took 2 years. There's many different phases. This time, you know, when we look back, that same job would have to be completed in under a year for us. Some of the key things up there, I got to know the community. At the time I dated up there, I got to know the other workers. There was drama, there was such highlights. So really a very impactful project for us, culturally enriching. I can't wait to tell you about it. So when we started up there, I was 19 years old, and I had actually convinced my friend Paul to join us. We were working under one of the foremans that came with us from the Club Regent Hotel. His name was Brad. That was the first week that I ever worked a 96-hour week, and let me tell you, when I saw my paycheck and saw how much the tax man took, really changed my perspective on a lot of things. Also, this was a huge panel job, so we had been spending a lot of time making panels in the shop. I kind of knew what the base of this was going to look like, and now it was time to offload and really set ourselves up on the site. The first portion of this project was actually inside the casino where we did all the walls. We did the Legends restaurant, we did this big tree in there. We're obviously not allowed to have a ton of pictures of that because the casino was open and active the entire time, and they get a kind of a little bit of a way about having video and pictures, so not a lot to show you there. A lot of the bars had big outcroppings come over top of them with wood coming down as the columns, and then they had numerous taxidermy sort of scenes set up with artificial plants, animals, and they were setting scenes up around the whole casino. So when we first started with our single panel, which started at the Legends Cafe and the area where you go towards the washrooms, there was actually no power at that time in the casino. So we didn't have all the equipment that we needed to get. So it was actually kind of funny because my dad will still talk about how we only got one massive panel up that day, and that's because we had to hand carry it through a set of double doors and put it up. These panels were less manageable. It took 6 of us just to get it into place, get it through the doors before we could even start welding. Damon was our welder. He came from Winnipeg with us. He actually was welding through the top of the roof where we were trying to tie it into base steel, and he actually fell through the floor. So that week also ended up being our first workplace injury. Not really injury, he was fine, but incident, let's say.
Come take a look at one of the most impressive waterfalls and ponds we've ever built. This thing is 2,500 gallons per minute. Does 2 20-horsepower pumps with 4 returns of 12-inch pipes. This thing is insane. Each of the ponds are around 45 by 30 feet, 5 feet deep. This is incredible.
that waterfall is still one of the more impressive, from a sheer size point, one of the more impressive ones that I have ever gotten the pleasure to do. And I did a lot of the steel work for that one. And we've worked on that feature a number of times over the years from a maintenance perspective, for little additions and changes, subtractions. On our next phase there, we started to then work our way into the hotel, because the hotel is now starting to become ready for us.
So my memory for Casino Rama, well, I was 14, so I don't have a ton of memories, but I was brought on a few different times. One of those times was actually to go pick up garbage after all the guys, which of course super glorious, but I do remember being awestruck by that waterfall. I honestly couldn't believe my eyes on what we were able to create even at that time, and that was with very little understanding of what went into the process. The next time I got to go to Casino Rama was actually to help my mom paint. This, little did I know, was the beginning of what inspired me for the rest of my career. I got to help block in color, clean, carry paints during this whole time. Now you might be thinking that's a pretty minor role for such a major project, and you're not wrong, but every single role counts. And what was most important for me on this job, I got to see the artistry and I got to see my mom work. And although maybe I didn't appreciate it at the time, I do now.
From Casino Rama, that was the first time that I remember being her helper, and we were painting completed areas. And during lunch or during after the end of the day, she would ask me what I would change if I did it. And she never gave her own input. She didn't say, well, I think the rock should have moved this way, or she was never critical of my own work, but she made me be critical of my own work.
At Manitoba, one of the architects, he knew some girls that were taking art university, and actually one of those artists, Sarah Johnson, she ended up becoming a Geller Prize winner. It was $50,000, and she was probably I would say, the closest in ability to be able to match what your mother was doing up at Rama.
Well, the different styles of painters that you look across the industry today and what they're trying to match. I think most people have figured out how to match sandstone, but I haven't seen anybody to this day being able to match Mom's granite.
So because this is meant to symbolize Mother Turtle, this will be a back foot. This is actually meant to be the turtle's tail. The other back foot, carpet, and if you go up the elevator to the next floor through the skylight, you'll be able to look down and you can see the other 2 feet and the head. So a little bit of symbolism here. We also don't get enough credit for our flatwork. This top capstone, I couldn't find the stones that would mimic the shape of the wall. So we actually spent some time to the capstone as well. Still looking good after 20 years. Frankly, I think I look a little bit older.
Third floor was a very interesting point, because the third floor is the spa, and they had the spa deck, and what they really wanted to represent in the spa deck was that Aurelia and Rama is a very unique place in which granite and limestone meet, and you see them together, whereas in most cases, like other areas, you don't. So there's only a few places on Earth that happens, where I guess the granite sort of during seismic pushes like burst up through the softer limestone, and then that's where you'd find them touching each other. We had to represent that on the spa deck. And the elevators at that time, we could not get the panels up there. So what we ended up actually doing is we brought the molds up there, and we actually sprayed each mold in the pool that would then one day become the spa pool. We sprayed them in the pool, we hoisted them up out of the pool, and we put them on the deck, and that's how we built that. We also did the hot tub, and we did the entrance where we got to use some really unique granite pieces that we had found that had some fantastic swirls in them. You know, when we put them all together, people would be like, oh, that's fake. But it was a real molded piece from natural phenomenon, so it was very interesting. So once we were working up there for a lot of time, we could also start working down in the Weir's restaurant, and that's where we started putting up the panel for the limestone in the restaurant, and that was meant to be a weeping wall, so that while you're eating, still a weeping wall, while you're eating you can hear, it's a very sensory overloaded restaurant and lobby, which I love. Like, it's such a fantastic experience even now to walk in and just hear everything, and it's almost like white noise, very relaxing. I could spend a lot of time there just listening to the sounds. Every time we go, we are in awe of what was created. Even casinos up here aren't doing that type of work anymore, not in Canada, and we're very proud of it. I love that community, such great symbolism. I got to be part of several ceremonies. It was really quite the fantastic experience. Casinos are an interesting place. To be honest, if I close my eyes, I can still hear the ding 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 from all the slot machines. Anywho, the things you remember.
So one of the greatest parts about Casino Rama was its heritage and its indigenous design intent. What I found absolutely incredible, they use local and far off indigenous artists so that art is seen all throughout the entire area. I found it truly incredible that they wanted to incorporate nature into every aspect of both the hotel and, of course, the casino. I found it really interesting that story was told throughout, and it wasn't lost floor to floor. I think that was a really, really interesting part of it. And of course, we love anytime you incorporate nature into an indoor or outdoor setting. It just brings a sense of well-being and completeness to you. And what an amazing feeling to be greeted by that sense of calm.
So what'd you think? Did you like it? If you want to see more of this content, you gotta subscribe. Make sure you smash that button and let us know. Until then, on to the next.